Let me thank my colleague for yielding, and let me thank all of my who've worked to put this bill together. Today I rise, and the House rises, to support and defend our Constitution. We do not take this action lightly, but simply there is no alternative. This is not a dispute between the parties or even between the branches of our government. This executive overreach is an affront to the rule of law and to the Constitution itself. I appreciate all the efforts of those working to fix our broken immigration system, especially since I'm one of them. What we're dealing with is a president who has ignored the people, has ignored the Constitution, and even his own past statements. In fact, on at least 22 occasions, he said he did not have the authority to do what he has done. Before he became president, on March 31st, 2008, the president said, and I quote, "I take the Constitution very seriously. The biggest problems that we're facing right now have to do with the president trying to not go through Congress at all. And that's what I intend to reverse when I'm president." On May 19th, 2008, the president said, and I quote, "I believe in the Constitution and I will obey the Constitution of the United States." Then after he was president, on May 5th, 2010, the president said, and I quote, "Anybody who tells you that I can wave a magic wand and make it happen hasn't been paying attention to how this town works." On July the 1st, 2010, the president said, and I quote, "There are those who have argued passionately that we should at least ignore the laws on the books. I believe such an indiscriminate approach would be both unwise and unfair." On October 14th, 2010, the president said, and I quote, "I do have an obligation to make sure that I'm following some of the rules. I can't simply ignore the laws that are out there." On October 25th, 2010, the president said, and I quote, "I am president. I am not king. I can't do these things just by myself. I can't just make up the laws by myself." On March 28th, 2011, the president said, and I quote, "America is a nation of laws, which means that I, as president, am obligated to enforce the law." On April 20th, 2011, the president said, and I quote, "I can't solve this problem by myself. I just can't do it by myself." On April 29th, 2011, the president said, and I quote, "Some here wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself. But that's not how democracy works." On May the 10th, 2011, the president said, and I quote, "They wish I could just bypass Congress and change the law myself, but that's not how democracy works." On July 25th, 2011, the president said, and I quote, "The idea of doing these things on my own is very tempting, but that's not how our system works. That's not how our democracy functions. That's not how our Constitution is written." On September 28th, 2011, the president said, and I quote, "We live in a democracy. You have to pass bills through the legislature, then I can sign them." On September 20th, 2012, the president said, and I quote, "What I've always said is that as head of the executive branch, there's a limit to what I can do." On October 16th, 2012, the president said, and I quote, "We're a nation of laws, and I've done everything I can on my own." On January 30th, 2013, the president said, and I quote, "I am not a king. I'm head of the executive branch. I'm required to follow the law." On January 30th, 2013, the president also said, and I quote, "I'm not a king. You know, my job as head of the executive branch is ultimately to carry out the law. On February 14th, 2013, the president said, and I quote, "The problem is that I'm the president of the United States. I'm not the emperor of the United States." July 16th, 2013, the president said, and I quote, "I think that it's very important for us to recognize that the way to solve this problem has to be legislative." On September 17th, 2013, the president said, and I quote, "My job in the executive branch is supposed to be to carry out the laws that are passed. But if we start broadening that, then essentially I would be ignoring the law." On November 25th, 2013, the president said, and I quote, "The easy way out is to try to yell and pretend I can do something by violating our laws. That's not our tradition." On March the 6th, 2014, the president said, and I quote, "I cannot ignore those laws any more than I could ignore any other of the laws on our books." And on August the 6th, 2014, the president said, and I quote, "I am bound by the Constitution. I am bound by the separation of powers." To think that the President of the United States actually studied constitutional law is one thing. He didn't just teach or learn constitutional law, he taught it as well. But now his actions suggest that he's forgotten what these words even mean. Enough is enough. By their votes last November, the people made clear that they wanted more accountability from this president. And by our votes here today, we will heed their will, and we will keep our oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.